Jada Pinkett Smith walked onto the set of the Kelly Clarkson Show with the kind of poise that came from decades in the spotlight, her tailored burgundy suit catching the studio lights, her hair styled into a sleek, modern cut that framed her face perfectly. The audience applauded enthusiastically as Kelly rose from her chair, meeting Jada in the middle of the stage for a warm hug that looked effortless to viewers at home. The first few minutes were smooth and lighthearted, full of laughter and easy conversation. They joked about the challenges of balancing work and family, traded playful remarks about their very different musical tastes, and even touched briefly on Jada's recent book tour. But behind Jada's measured smile, there was a certain alertness. In her eyes, the kind of awareness that comes from knowing an interview can shift from friendly to pointed in a heartbeat. Kelly shuffled through her cue cards, leaning forward slightly as she began to segue into the next topic.
"So, Jada," she said with a bright tone, "you've been in the headlines a lot lately, not just for your projects, but for some
of the things you've shared publicly." The audience let out a low murmur, clearly intrigued. Jada's posture straightened a fraction, her smile still in place, but her gaze sharpening just enough to register with anyone paying close attention. "That's part of life in the public eye," she replied evenly. Kelly chuckled. "Of course, but some of those headlines have been, let's say, conversation starters." The crowd laughed, but the tension under the humor was undeniable. Jada nodded slowly. "People are always going to have opinions," she said, "especially when you speak your truth." Kelly held her gaze for a beat, the kind of moment that seems harmless to the casual viewer, but to those in the room felt like the first step into deeper, it's possibly messier territory. Kelly's smile stayed bright, but there was a shift in her tone now, the kind of gentle curiosity daytime hosts use when they're about to wade into more personal waters. "Speaking your truth has definitely gotten people talking," she said, glancing briefly at her cue cards before locking eyes with Jada again. "Like that recent interview you did? You know, the one where you revealed some pretty unexpected details about your marriage? That had social media on fire for days." The audience let out a mix of chuckles and murmurs, their energy lifting as they sensed something spicier was coming. Jada gave a measured smile, her voice calm, said what I felt needed to be said. "I've always been open about my journey." Kelly nodded, but pressed on. "Right, but you know how people are. They take a soundbite and run with it. Some folks were saying you were being too blunt, maybe even stirring the pot a little. Do you see it that way?" Jada's eyes flickered, the faintest sign of irritation flashing before she answered. "No, I see it as being honest. There's a difference between stirring the pot and telling your story." A few members of the audience clapped, but the sound was brief, as if they were testing the waters. Kelly tilted her head slightly, her curiosity now edged with something more pointed. "But don't you think there's a time and place for certain truths? It's like maybe some things are better kept private?" The murmurs in the audience grew, and Jada leaned back slightly in her chair, crossing one leg over the other. "Private for whose comfort?" she asked, her tone still even, but carrying a subtle challenge. The crowd reacted with a few surprised ohs, and the co-host at the far end of the couch glanced toward the wings. It was clear to anyone in the room that the conversation had just taken its first real step toward tension, and that neither woman seemed interested in backing down from where it might lead. Polite veneer between them was beginning to thin, and even the audience could feel it. Kelly perhaps mistaking the charged energy for an opportunity to create a breakthrough moment, leaned forward with her elbows on her knees. "I mean, Jada, you've shared so much over the years on your show and interviews, even in your book. But lately, some people feel like the things you're putting out there are more controversial than ever." The audience murmured, clearly invested now. Jada's smile was still there, but it had tightened. Her eyes locked on Kelly with a steady, unflinching gaze. "Controversial to who?" she asked. Kelly hesitated just long enough for the pause to feel heavy. "To fans, to the media, even to some other celebrities," she said, her voice still smooth, but carrying the slightest edge. "You know, there's been talk that maybe you're sharing these details to keep your name in the headlines." The reaction from the crowd was immediate, sharp gasps, mixed with the kind of excited chatter that surges through a live audience when they realize they're witnessing something unscripted. Jada's posture shifted subtly, her shoulders squaring, her voice a fraction lower now. "If people think I'm living my life for the headlines, they don't know me at all." The applause that followed was louder this time, but not unanimous. Some audience members were too busy watching the way the two women were now holding eye contact like neither was willing to blink first. Kelly nodded slowly, as if acknowledging the strength in Jada's response, but unwilling to let the point go. "I'm just saying," she continued, "when you're in the public eye, you have to expect people will question your motives." Jada leaned forward slightly, matching Kelly's body language. "Questioning my motives is one thing," she said, "but questioning my right to tell my story, that's crossing a line." The crowd reacted again, louder this time, a wave of O's rolling through the studio. Offstage, a stage manager made a subtle wrap-it-up gesture toward Kelly, but neither woman seemed ready to disengage. The tension was no longer just under the surface. It was front and center, and the audience was hanging on every word. Fully aware that they might be about to see this conversation tip into something far more explosive. The line was crossed. With a question that Kelly delivered in a tone that tried to sound casual, but couldn't mask the weight behind it. "Okay, but if telling your story ends up hurting people you love, like, say, your husband, is it still worth it?" The audience reacted instantly, a chorus of gasps and murmurs swelling through the room. Jada's smile faded, replaced by a look of sharp focus. "Not in the business of hurting people," she said slowly. "But I'm also not in the business of hiding my truth to make others more comfortable." Kelly leaned back slightly, her expression still polite but now tinged with a kind of wary defiance. "But there's a difference between hiding and protecting," she said. "Sometimes keeping certain things private is the better choice." Jada shook her head, her earrings catching the studio light as she moved. "That's your choice for your life. It's not mine." The audience oohed loudly, the sound echoing off the set walls. Kelly's smile thinned. "I just think there's a way to be honest without being explosive." Jada's reply came quickly, her tone sharper now. "Explosive is when people take what I say out of context and twist it into something it's not. I can't control that, and I won't apologize for it." The applause that followed was loud but layered with murmurs. The crowd, sensing the current, had shifted fully into confrontation. The co-host, who had been silent, glanced off stage, as if silently asking the producers what to do. Kelly, however, pressed again, her voice a fraction lower. "You don't think there's any part of you that likes the attention this brings?" The reaction from the audience was immediate and chaotic: gasps, scattered applause, even a few whistles. Jada leaned forward now, her posture commanding, her voice steady but edged with fire. "That's insulting," she said flatly. "And if that's the direction this is going, maybe we should stop right here." Kelly opened her mouth to respond, but the studio was already buzzing with the kind of tension that made even the crew freeze. It was no longer a question of if this would blow up, it was how soon. The studio was now humming with an energy that was no longer just excitement, it was charged. Unpredictable, almost volatile. Kelly shifted in her seat, cue cards forgotten in her lap, as she tried to regain control of the moment. "Jada, I'm not trying to insult you," she said, her voice tighter now. "But I think you have to acknowledge that some of these choices—" Jada cut her off before she could finish. "What I have to acknowledge," she said, her tone clipped and deliberate, "is that I came here to talk about my work, not to defend my right to speak about my own life. If you can't respect that, then we don't have anything else to discuss." The audience let out a loud ripple of O's, some clapping, others whispering rapidly to the person next to them. Kelly's expression hardened, though she kept her voice level. "I respect you, but I also have a job to do, and that's to ask the questions people want answered." Jada shook her head, leaning forward slightly. "Asking questions is one thing. Accusing me of chasing headlines is another." That line drew another swell of murmurs from the crowd. From the wings, a producer made a quick, sharp hand signal to a pair of stagehands, a sign that things were escalating too far. Kelly inhaled, her smile now entirely gone. "Look, if you're going to walk off, that's your choice," she said. But Jada pushed herself up from the couch in one smooth motion, her hands at her sides. "No, I'm not walking off. I'm being shown off," she said, glancing toward the stage manager now approaching. The audience gasped as one of the security staff stepped discreetly onto the set, moving toward Jada with Karif.